Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is proposing a minimum global tax on multinational corporations as a way to reverse some of the damage done by offshore tax havens. She explains more in this next clip.
We're working with G20 nations to agree to a global minimum corporate tax rate that can stop the race to the bottom. Together, we can use a global minimum tax to make sure the global economy thrives based on a more level playing field in the taxation of multinational corporations and spurs innovation, growth, and prosperity.
So this is a big deal. There weren't very many details provided about what this minimum global tax would look like, but it is an important issue to tackle because, as Common Dreams reported, the proliferation of so-called tax havens around the world in recent years contributed to the sharp decline in the average global corporate tax rate, which has fallen from around 40% in 1980 to only 24% today as countries adjusted their rates downward to either attract multinationals or prevent companies from seeking to stash their profits elsewhere. So Ryan, I know that Biden has something about this kind of baked into his infrastructure proposal. And so can you explain a little bit about what this would look like, what this would mean?
I mean, the details would still have to be hashed out, but the idea is that if major governments get together, they have the power to accomplish this. You know, they would have to pressure these smaller countries and also Delaware, to go along and to make sure that that they don't continue to be tax havens. But they can do that. Like this idea that Luxembourg, is just so powerful that there's nothing that all of these united countries can do to pressure them is just completely absurd. The question is, do these governments have the actual will to stand up to the global oligarchs and say, like, no, actually the people through their elected representatives are the ones that are going to run this world, and you're going to serve at the pleasure of the people rather than the other way around. And once they come to that agreement, the precise way that they set it up can be hashed out. But they have to decide that they're going to actually do that, which requires all of them cooperating and not allowing one single member of that coalition to say, okay, well everybody else is going to end. Is going to require transparency and is going to charge you 30%. Well, hey, 10% over here. Come on in. And so everybody has to recognize that it's in their long-term, it's against their long-term interests to play that game. And it should be clear at this point, because at some point it passes a point of no return where the oligarchs have more power and the governments can come together and try to do this. And fail. They're still at a place where governments are more powerful than the Davos elite. If they collectively decided to take on the Davos crowd and the CEOs of the world, they could still win. But that's not going to be the case forever if the current trajectory continues.
What do you think the likelihood is that you'll get all of these major countries agreeing to a minimum global tax?
I think the right-wing turn against major corporations kind of increases the chances of it happening. It's a bizarre development, and it's not just Trump. It's not just in the U.S. It's all over the world. You're seeing this kind of anti-global corporate sentiment arising among right-wing governments, and you're seeing the kind of center-left pro-corporate parties that were popular throughout the 1990s just being completely annihilated. Whether it's that wing of the Democratic Party suffering here in the United States, not as much as elsewhere, but in Europe the center left has been just completely crushed, and it's been replaced by different wings on both the left and the right that do have a real hostility toward this global corporate power. So you do have at least the environment where it's in play as a possibility. You can't underestimate the power of these multinational corporations, but you also shouldn't overestimate it.
I know this is separate from the issue that I'm about to bring up, but right now there are some major corporations in the United States that are having to shut down, some car companies, for instance, because of a shortage of these, I believe they're called semiconductor chips that are manufactured in Taiwan. But there are these chips that are important for the production of various electronics, various devices, and obviously there have been some disruptions to our supply chain. And so it makes me think about, all of the vulnerabilities that various countries, especially the United States, currently are experiencing as a result of shipping jobs abroad to exploit cheap labor. Do you think that that's an issue that the Biden administration is going to attempt to tackle in any way? I mean, I just feel like this pandemic has really revealed all of our vulnerabilities, and I'm not really seeing a robust discussion in Congress or at the White House about the flaws in our supply chain and the need to just constantly rely on labor abroad.
Well, Biden does happen, strangely, to be staffed, by some pretty progressive economists. Jared Bernstein was his kind of economic advisor when he was vice president and was known as by far the most left-wing person in the entire Obama administration. He's now a senior advisor to President Biden. Heather Boushey, Cecilia Richards these are pretty progressive-minded economists who do think seriously about the issues that you're talking about. China has also developed to a point where their ability to race to the bottom is diminished by just the fact that they're not anywhere near the bottom anymore. They just simply don't have as much. They have much cheaper labor than we have, but it's not as cheap as it used to be. If instead of pumping all of this quantitative easing into the hands of people that are snatching up single-family homes all over the country, that was directed instead to building manufacturing capacity so that you don't have the types of supply chain disruptions that you're talking about, then you'd see a much more self-sufficient and resilient economy. And I do think that there are actually people thinking about that in a serious way when there haven't been in the recent past. Whether it's being thought about enough that they can actually do something about it, I think we'll be able to answer that when we get through this infrastructure package, because that would be the place to make a big dent in it.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.